Welcome to another episode of Ion Sullivan. I am your host, Mike McGuire, joined today, as we are each week, by the chairman, Rob Doherty. Rob, welcome back.
And welcome back. Well, yeah, I was kind of on like two separate vacations.
You were on two separate. One's not really a vacation.
Well, no, it wasn't a vacation, but I still went down to Florida. It was 89 degrees yesterday. I mean,
perfect.
Where we went out to eat last night was right on the outlet. I mean, there was dolphins in the water. It was kind of nice.
Miami traded some players to Tampa Bay?
No. The funny thing is when the waitress came over and said, I don't know where the Dolphins are, Matt said they're probably in New England down by 20.
Probably. So, all right, so Jalen Ramsey was swimming around in the bay. It works. So after a hiatus, we are back with another episode of Ion Sullivan. Is an important one we have today.
Correct.
But I've got to tell you, the people that came to me in apparent panic that they thought Ion Sullivan was not coming back.
Oh, come
we were
on.
A 2-week hiatus.
Come on.
I actually got violated on probation.
So the sad thing about that is, unfortunately, I was sick 1 week.
Right.
Okay, I couldn't speak. That may be better for the show. I do understand that, but I do have to. I have to. Be your sounding board here. So I could not perform that day, and then I was away on vacation in Newport. Then I came back for a few days, and then I had to go to Florida, which was
on business.
It was business.
Yeah. All right. So we are back now, and a lot's been happening in the county since we have been on hiatus, and nothing has garnered more attention than what I'll affectionately called Little's Folly.
I think you're being kind here. I have to tell you, John Little, has the Commissioner of Health and Family Services, has been nothing short of a disaster since he's been in there.
Well, he is consistent, though. Give him credit for that. Each department under his tutelage has performed poorly.
One of the things that you measure someone by is, did they leave the place better off after they leave than when they found it, right? I mean, that is generally, was their tenure a success?
Correct.
Not? But I will tell you that John is in a long line of people who have just done a horrible job up there for the residents of Sullivan County.
I don't know that it can get much worse, but let's open this up now. So we learn about a week or two ago that the legislature has passed a resolution to enter into a long-term lease that would, for 25 years, that would garner about $8 million from the state to build a homeless shelter for the tune of about $8 million that would occupy 20 individuals. Not families. 20 beds, that's it.
Correct.
And the site is off of Pitaluga Road.
Correct.
And
just to put that in perspective, it's where the sheriff's department is, just down a little bit further.
Right. So if you were to go down the back service road, which you're not allowed to go down, and is the sheriff's office, so I don't suggest anybody going down it. But if you go down that road, that dumps into Pitaluga Road.
Correct.
So that's that area, that apron there, where the county is saying that they no longer need that property for a public purpose, and they're able to enter into a long-term lease.
Well, just to be clear, it's in a private neighborhood.
That's the key, and we're gonna get into that. Okay. So they're looking at building a homeless shelter, and you and I have experienced this, and the person that's experienced it more than anyone is our good friend Walter Garigliano.
Correct.
And he has said to me, if he said it once, he said it 50 times. NIMBY will live in every single project that you bring, not in my backyard.
Correct.
NIMBY. So, but here, the county has determined that they can excess property no longer needed for a public purpose.
Well, they are saying that they're going to do it, but it failed on a vote.
It failed on a vote. Well, it passed on a vote, but it failed because they neglected to understand the law.
Well, the law is unnecessary.
It's
it gets in the way.
Sprint,
it gets in the way.
It's somebody stuck a hurdle in the middle of a 100-yard dash. What are you going to do?
Mr. Freehill's a good friend, so I'll just
Mr. Freehill is a good friend and an excellent lawyer, and he's got a great staff. I know that because I put most of them together. That's actually not true. They've got a couple of new people. Andrew does a great job, and they have a new woman that started. I understand is very, very sharp. But so they passed it by a simple majority. It needed a supermajority because it is a long-term lease of property,
Correct.
And they also are passing a local law, which, in order to do that, they also required a supermajority.
Correct.
So that's where we're at. So here, they've selected a piece of property for a 20-bed facility. No question, Sullivan County has a homeless problem. No question about that.
We can get into the reasons why it has a homeless problem, but
we can get to
we don't have 5 hours.
We don't have 5 hours. No, Jacob is going to give us about an hour and 8 minutes.
Jacob said he has a hair appointment tomorrow, and he's got to make it. So,
and he's not only a spokesman for Hair Club for Men, he's also a client.
No, that kid has quite the head of hair.
He's got a head of hair. So, but here, the point I want to make is they're actually building this in somebody's backyard.
Correct.
It's a place. So there has been quite a bit of pushback, led primarily by 4 legislators.
Correct.
Mr. Perillo from Fallsburg.
Correct.
Miss Ward, also from Fallsburg.
Correct. So just so we know, she voted yes
in the committee.
In the committee, and then voted no in the full board.
And then Mr. Solomoni is a solid no, and Terry Bernardo is a solid no.
Correct. I believe Amanda Ward's a solid no too. Now
I believe she is, and we're hearing that Mr. Perillo wants more information, and he could be persuaded to become a yes.
That would be insane.
That would be insane. So Rob, that gives our audience the background, the backdrop on this project. We know what facilities in the county that house the same population, what they are, and what they are is a bane in the existence of the Liberty Police Department, which has to invest a disproportionate amount of their very valuable time in policing primarily 2 areas: the Lincoln Motel and the Knights Inn, which is the Knights Inn now is legendary.
Correct. So, if that's such a problem for the chief of police, he is neighbors to John Little. I mean,
it's true. They are.
I mean, they could just talk over a cup of coffee on Saturday morning and say, "Hey, can we get rid of Knights Inn?" But apparently that's not the play. The play is to get $1.5 million to police the Knights Inn.
Correct.
Right,
and there's no question
it's a money grab.
They need to get almost a full-time person there. I mean, the stuff that comes out of those 2 facilities is remarkable.
It was an ill-gotten idea by a person who just doesn't understand how to do the job properly.
County is a contract. Rent 75 beds a night every night.
Correct. And I remember John standing up there so proud when he first did that, and he was talking about how this was going to be so much better.
We're never going to have to look for places when people come. They're going to be able to be right in this beautiful hotel with all the amenities that we need.
Great. I remember like it was yesterday.
Oh, so do I. As I shook my head and like, oh my God.
I remember we caucused on that issue, and we were like, this is going to be a disaster.
Sure.
And it's been exactly what we said it was going to be.
Right.
I mean, Mr. Brooks went on and on about it, and I still remember him in the committee room going, this is crazy. This is going to be a disaster. And Mike was right again.
He was right again. So we've got a population, and the homeless population bring with them often baggage. We're not disparaging them. We're not looking down on them. We understand that we want to be humanitarians. We want to provide humane accommodations for them.
But as you know, Mike, I tend to be a little bit more liberal on some issues than most people would believe I would be.
You were raised by Democrats.
I was raised by Democrats. That is correct. And as my wife likes to point out in every argument we ever have about politics, so
she was not.
she was not. She was raised by far right people. So anyway, I do believe in social safety nets. Mm-hmm. I do believe that there are a lot of people in this county that are, a bad month away from being in a homeless situation. Sure. I think there's a lot of broken families, and as you know, mm-hmm. You were a county court judge. You are a defense attorney now, and you understand. You understand this very well. You were county attorney, and you ran. That for the county.
With a great deal of luck, the county survived the 4 years.
Oh, thank God for that.
Under my administration.
Well, that was all proven out in the Min Hudson article that,
right.
Come on, stop. Yeah. So with all that said, I think that they just go about it all wrong. I mean, so I do believe there has to be a social safety net. I do believe that, the county has responsibility to fund that to a certain degree. But when you're given carte blanche to saying, live your life any way you want, we got you. Mm-hmm. You're just setting up a disaster. And that's what's happening right now.
Well, we've got, so what the baggage that comes along with the homeless population in many cases, and eventually we'll have our district attorney. He's real busy with a couple of cases right now. But Brian and I have had this discussion that an alarming percentage of their serious criminal cases have one of two things or both: mental health component, drug component.
Which is the mental health is a major issue.
Major issue.
Okay, and so we all know. I mean, we get money from the federal government because of the opioid use. Yep. And how they force these pills on people. Yep. And then when the pills ran out, they turned to heroin, and they started a cottage industry in the county.
And fentanyl.
And all that fun, the stuff that kills people. It kills people, and it's addictive. I mean, I remember one of the surgeon generals once said that it's more addictive than smoking cigarettes.
Correct.
And it is a problem. I mean, I'm sure you've had this conversation with your children. Sure. I had it with my children. Mm-hmm. Don't do it the first time.
It's the most difficult.
Correct. The first time. Just avoid that, and you'll be fine the rest of the way.
Correct.
And it seems to have paid off for both of our 6 boys.
Right.
But there is no safety net on drug use here. There's zero. So our state, in the infinite wisdom, has let people just commit crime after crime after crime, feeding the addiction.
Correct.
And they just let them out over and over and over and over again, not to see a court date for years.
Yep.
Okay. Which and I know what they're going to do. They're going to take 34 offenses and condense it into one offense, and the person's going to do 6 months in jail. Where?
Often that happens, not always, but often that happens, and part of the reason it happens is that the system would grind to a halt. I mean, the problem that Brian, our DA, Brian Conity faces is that you got 100 cases today. Well, there's a dump truck coming tomorrow with another 25, 30 cases. So you've got to try to move them along. Correct. And I know that Brian particularly works hard to try to address the drug problems. And the state gives lip service. They created drug court. You can't get everybody into drug court. They created judicial diversion. You can't get everyone into judicial diversion. And many of these people have a drug component. Correct. So the state created the medication-assisted programs. And so our folks in the jail, they're getting Suboxone.
Oh, not all the time, though.
Oh, when they run out, as Prime Care runs out. Not our jail, but Prime Care. They run out, but we get We have methadone clinics. We have one right here in Sullivan County.
My uncle was on methadone for over 20 years.
There you go.
Okay. So did they solve the problem? They didn't solve the problem.
They haven't solved the problem.
I mean, my uncle took methadone for 20 years, and they put it off for the eventual outcome for 20 years. Guess what? He died.
Well, Suboxone, right? So that cured it.
Yeah.
He didn't use heroin a single time after he died.
Yeah,
so that methadone must have worked for 20 years.
There you go.
So the Suboxone was supposed to came on the market as something to take the edge off, to help people over those first couple of months and the urges until your brain heals. Well, now we got people that are on Suboxone for 20, 30 years, like you said.
Well, the problem is that they're creating a lifestyle.
Correct.
Okay? And then they're funding the lifestyle.
Correct.
Okay? And they're just chasing their next high.
Right.
But, this 20-bed facility, gives them a place to eat, gives them a place, out of the harsh elements that is Sullivan County, gives them a warm bed. You don't think there's going to be crime in there?
Oh, well, let's face it. So the Knights Inn, I go back to when it was a Holiday Inn, or Howard Johnson's, then a Holiday Inn, or Ramada Inn. It was a lovely place. I would have business clients come in, and they would stay there. It was a lovely hotel.
Yeah.
And now not so much. Well, the only thing that's changed is we've put a population that has needs that we can't address. So the Lincoln Motel, same thing. We've got it loaded up with sex offenders. That's where they get paroled to. And the Liberty Police are there constantly.
All day, all night.
All day, all night they could be there. So now we've got this 20-bed facility. Well, first of all...
No, we don't have it yet.
We don't have it yet. Now we have the proposal.
Correct.
For a 20-bed facility, keeping in mind that we have probably 100 or more beds between the two hotels in Liberty, plus we've got 2 more in Monticello. We've got the Monticello Inn, and we've got the Super 8. So we've got beds. So I don't know what the capacity of these hotels are, but my guess is between the 5 or 6 hotels that we use, we probably could spread another 4 or 5 people in each one and not need to build a $8 million facility that's going to only deal with 20 people.
So it's $400,000 a bed. Okay.
Correct. $400,000 a bed.
But it gets worse than that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if you start doing your research on this, $8 million is not enough. Okay.
Research.
Well, I'm silly like that. I understand. So
you mean when a salesman sells you something, that's it? It's not all good?
Well, for the people who are still in the legislature from last legislature, people who sat in the audience and watched it, I wouldn't trust a thing John Little says. Not a word.
Right.
If he told me it was raining outside and the water was up to my knees, I would have to look outside to make sure it was raining.
Correct.
Okay? Because I wouldn't believe a word that guy said. Okay? So, and keep in mind, under John Little, Lexington went away. Catholic Charities is closed.
SCAT is closed.
SCAT is closed. And what was the other one? The one that Nancy McGraw closed. Said that we didn't need them anymore. Sun something or other.
Sun River Health.
Yeah, Sun River Health. We need them either.
Right.
But how are we doing now that Nancy McGraw and John Little have gotten rid of every service to help this population out of the county?
Well, and we understand that tomorrow we will start the process of selecting a new pope.
Yes.
Folks, the Catholic Church is not hurting for money.
They are not.
For Catholic Charities to leave, we had the same people that have done nothing to keep Catholic Charities here went ballistic over 12 people changing offices when they get their assignments on an iPad for fear that the entire health rankings would sink lower than they are because those 12 people wouldn't be available to inspect restaurants anymore.
Well, restaurants and camps.
That's it.
I mean, the funny thing is, at one of my businesses, I had those fine folks, and they were like, no one wants to go up to Liberty. It's all on our pad.
Right.
It's all on the pad. I don't write on paper. I do everything right here. And when they were finished with my excellent, inspection,
right,
they came back and they handed me a copy. I signed one of them, handed it back to the guy. He handed it to me. We went about our business.
So, Chairwoman Reich, when she got word that the Department of Health was leaving North Street because they didn't have enough physical space.
Well, which, by the way, I tried to prevent a year and a half before that.
Right.
And I was shot down by Ira Steingart and Joe Perello.
Correct.
Shot down completely.
Right. So you saw it coming.
Correct.
You see that time?
Yeah, I can see that.
You saw it coming, and it didn't matter when it ultimately happened. Remarkably, it was your fault.
Yeah.
You allowed this to happen, and what are you doing about it?
Yeah. But the funny thing is, we did do something about it.
You did do something about it.
So we created space, up in Liberty.
We entered into a long-term lease. It was a lot of work to put that together with the state of New York.
Well, the problem is that they have certain, parameters,
correct,
right, that you have to fill. So in the old building on North Street, it was so long ago that lease had been signed,
right,
that they didn't exactly have to keep up with it. But so now when you sign a new lease, the windows have to be, so much sunlight has to come in. The outlets have to be so far apart from each other. There's a lot of different accommodations that you have to make. So we literally had to build the space.
Kristen Janowski, an amazingly talented architect that this county has no idea how fortunate they are to have someone like that.
Correct.
Pulled her hair out for about 6 months dealing with the specs that they needed.
Correct.
And then the very last day after she did it, I remember we were up there. They had done the renovations. Everything was all set. They walked in and they said, well, those file cabinets, those can't stay here.
Correct.
And Nancy McGraw said, well, you can't move my file cabinets. And there was the standoff.
Correct.
So I remember making a phone call and saying to you, I'm going to tell them they got to move the file cabinets. And you said, fine.
We'll deal with it.
We'll deal with it. Because that's the only... And without that, the Department of Health would be set up in... Everything would be done in Sullivan County.
Correct.
The camps, the restaurants, that's all they do there. But there was that political outcry.
Well, it's always politics.
Right.
I mean, you have to remember, Nadia Reich was also in charge of Health and Family Services when we became the lowest ranked, county in the state of New York.
Correct.
All right. We went from, unfortunately, about 57 down to 62.
Right.
We were worse than the Bronx.
We were worse than the Bronx.
Even though you and I were both born there.
We were born there, but you know what? We left and went to hell.
Went to hell. So when I took her off as chair of Health and Family Services,
and it was outcry mostly by legislator Scott, who was at that time antagonizer Scott.
Correct. We were the worst.
We were the worst.
We were the worst in the state of New York. I'm like, we can't get any worse. I mean, so let's just leave her there because now we're at the worst position. This is where she can operate.
Right.
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 I mean,
there's no place to go but here.
Correct.
And we both know because we looked into it. It's an economic issue.
Correct.
So
the when you look at it, you look at the MTA counties. It's a money issue. I mean, the Bronx, oddly enough, is an outlier. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not. I mean, you look at Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn's Kings County, Staten Island, which is Richmond County. You look at Putnam. You look at Nassau, Suffolk, Dutchess,
and Orange.
Orange, Rockland. They're all pretty high up on the list.
Right.
All within the top 20.
Right.
And the reason for that is it's a money issue.
It's a money issue.
They can all go work in the city.
Right.
Right. We're just a little bit out of it. Mm-hmm. And then you see a county like Ulster. They were pretty far down the list, too. Mm-hmm. They were in the 40s, I believe.
In the 40s, yeah.
Because they don't have access to the same kind of money.
Correct.
And that's the issue.
Correct.
It's not a true health issue.
So there was that hue and cry when the health department was relocating to get better spaces. Mm. But Catholic Charities is pulling out, given where we're at.
Whoa. Did we solve the drug problem? Is that why they're pulling out?
It's completely done. We don't have any drug problem anymore. It's all done. It's all taken care of.
Great job, Mike Schiff.
So, my question to some of the folks in the county were, why do we think this 20-bed facility is going to have any different a population with any different baggage than the Knights Inn, then the Lincoln
It's
Motel.
just geography, Mike.
It's just geography.
That's all it is. I mean, all you're gonna do is contaminate another neighborhood.
Correct. So
that's all you're gonna do.
And you've got over in that general area, the Delano, that there's a lot of families are placed there homeless, and they've got their problems. A lot of family court problems out of there, and so. But I'm told that the 20-bed facility that they want to build for $8 million, which is coming from our state grant, is going to be different.
Okay.
Because of all the services are in-house.
Okay, so let's just take a step back on the $8 million figure.
Right.
That's not the total bill.
It's not?
The total bill is going to be somewhere in the $12 to $14 million range. That the county's going to pick up the difference.
Ooh.
But they're not telling you this now yet.
Well, why would they?
Well, why would they tell you that? Okay.
They didn't tell you the $80 million jail would be $120 million either.
Well, no, because it was Nadia Reich, and some other people that just did a horrible job on that. I remember talking to the great Nancy Buck and Josh Potosik in a meeting one time. It was a finance meeting, and we were sitting there, and we were going back and forth. And I said to Josh and Nancy, is it realistic that we could be out of all our bond debt, except for the jail, in 4 years if we ran the county properly? And they both said yes to that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right? And that was like the driven goal, right? We have got to get out of bond debt, right? And and we, keep in mind, when I came into office, there was $14 million in fund balance, and I left with $87 million while paying off $26 million of bond early. Okay? So...
And flat tax.
And flat tax. And so we pushed really hard for that, and I was very excited that could be possible. Obviously, the election went the other way, and now here we are looking at a situation where we could be breaking the tax cap next year.
So we've got a couple of things that I want to focus on. One, the company that's going to come and run this 20-bed laboratory, they say that their facilities won't be like other homeless hotels because they have all the services that people need in-house.
Okay, so it's funny that you mentioned that. So the name of the company is Honor Shelter.
Okay,
they run a facility on 1838 Seward Avenue in Middletown, New York, right down the road.
Yeah.
In fact, they could go on a class trip and they can go down there, and the legislature can check it out. Much like we did when we were looking for who was going to take over the nursing home. All the legislature, and I mean Alan Sorensen came with us. I mean, every legislator did this. We went, and saw. Tell you, Ira and Joey, I think, saw 6 or 7. Alan went with some of them. I saw 3 or 4. Brooks was with me, and Conklin was with me on those. I know that Louis went to several. We went down and met with that guy Frank, who runs the Orange County one.
Yep.
People went out and they did their due diligence, and there was a huge outcry. If I'm not mistaken, there was a huge outcry from now Legislator Kat Scott and Nadia Reich that it couldn't be certain companies because they had bad reviews online.
Correct.
And that was their whole thing.
Big deal.
I mean, it wasn't that. So now Joey and Ira had went to a couple of their facilities.
Yep.
I think Albie Bachman went with them.
Albie went with them, and they got sandwiches.
And then they got
and
some sweatsuits.
Yeah. How big can a place be if you get a sandwich?
Come on. And what was the name of that sandwich?
The Grandwich.
Yeah, the Grandwich. That was it, right? So they had a few. So just so you know, Albie spoke about it, Ira spoke about it, and Joey spoke about it, and they all said that they were fine run places. Okay, but Nadia Reich and Kat Scott, who was a citizen at the time, is now a legislator, kept saying, but they have bad reviews.
Yes, you got to know the reviews. People die there.
People die there.
In nursing homes.
In nursing homes. Well, that happens all the time, by the way. So I said, let's look at some of honest
taking a
shelters.
page from Legislator Scott's book and doing our due diligence. You took a look at honor shelter.
Correct. So it's right here, honor shelter. Jacob, can we see that? Can we see that honor shelter? No? Closer? Tell me when, Jacob. Okay, right there. Okay, so that's honor shelter right there. I'm sorry, that was just some technical difficulty there because I'm not that bright. All right, so as you saw on the thing, we're going to go to reviews. And it's 3.1 is their reviews, okay?
That means what? That on a scale of 1 to 10?
1 through 5.
1 through 5, they're 3.1.
Okay. So
it's enough for the Hall of Fame if you're a baseball player.
Okay. So this is a week ago.
Okay.
Okay.
It's recent.
So this is the most recent review. Good luck with anyone trying to get help from them. I'm a mother that escaped DV, and DV, I imagine, means domestic violence. And newly disabled with rare incurable syndrome with 3 kids. I'm about to be homeless, and they said that they couldn't even help me. I told them I can't walk, and then they told me to drive to a different place.
Oh, if you can't walk, driving is an option.
Yeah, there you go. Their website also states, so she's referencing that in their website, they say that they provide that service.
Well, that's what they said to the legislature, trying to get the legislature to give them a piece of property for 25 years and sign on for $8 million.
And now keep in mind, this is not a anonymous person. I mean, this person has their name up there.
Has their name up there.
Okay. Their website also states that they help with home care management, and on the phone they said that they didn't do that. Everything that's listed on their website that they said that they do help you with, they don't. But the point is that I read the website and I went over, with a fine-tooth comb here.
As you do.
And the one thing I found is they don't mention drug services.
Well, that's impossible because that in mental health is the biggest problems.
Okay, so overview. If you want to go to the overview, we go down to honor, right? I mean that's who these fine folks are.
Okay.
You hit the website. Let's build paths to better futures.
Okay.
Okay. So they 175 runaway and homeless youth, nearly 7,000 calls handled by our helpline, housing for 1,000 men and women in a temporary shelter, nutrition, the whole deal. And again,
Very good.
I don't see the drug issue being handled here. I mean, isn't that why we're bringing them here?
Well, and my understanding is this is a shelter where services are available. This is not a program.
No.
So these folks can say, I'm not going to, I don't want to follow your nutrition or.
Correct.
Now, of course, though proponents would say that never happens. Yeah, well, let me give you a tour of the Knights Inn and show you how often that happens. Because all those people have probation on top of them. They have the courts on top of them.
So as you know, the family that lost the child,
correct,
that, was major headlines that John Little lied about. Okay?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, he lied about it because he had to cover up for his inadequacy.
Correct. And that's a fact. He lied about it.
Oh yeah.
If you want to go to court, John, let's do this. Okay.
Right.
Okay. He lied about that.
He said that he had been begging the county attorney to remove when there was no record whatsoever of any communication on that family between the county attorney's office and his office for a period of about 5 months. Correct. When there was daily communication between the two offices, between numerous people in each of the offices.
Correct.
There was probably, if you were to take the amalgam, 25, 30 emails a day between the two offices.
Correct.
But none of them, because we had IT, we had Lauren Green, not me, Lauren Green print out every email between the two agencies. None about that family. So that was a big fabrication.
And I think you got a text the next morning from someone in John's agency saying, we just didn't have enough to remove the child.
Correct. That was the day after
and that's
the
a
death.
fact. That is a fact. If you want to go to court, let's go.
Yeah.
I'd love to have this conversation in public. Okay, so that family was, I believe, in 6 programs.
They were in. They had every program that we could offer to a family in that level of need, and in fact, they had a caseworker visit them at 3:30 in the afternoon on the night that the 18-month-old tragically died. And the report that day, which very interestingly enough, never got produced.
Never.
But we were privy to it because we were in court the next day to remove the surviving child.
So when this person from John's office
Correct.
went to the room to see the people, they weren't there.
They weren't there.
So he met them in the parking lot.
It was a lovely day. They were out with the two kids,
nice.
walking around the parking lot. The kids were getting air. Everybody was great.
So they didn't see them in their home setting.
Correct.
So they could bump into them in Walmart and be like, "Oh yeah, they look great. Everything's fantastic. Let's
great.
move on."
Yeah.
Right?
And I spoke myself to that caseworker the day after the death because we had a removal hearing on the surviving child, and he was there at 3:30. It was no problems. The parents had gone to their methadone clinic that day. All was good. They were alert. They were responsive. They were talking. No issues whatsoever. And that was the consistent message when the records, which very interestingly enough got suppressed and nobody saw them.
Well, no, that's not true.
That's not true.
We did see them.
We did see them because we had them already from a way earlier situation.
And we called the state to ask if we could read them.
We could read them.
And
the
they
state
said yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The state gave the permission to the legislature to read them. And in fact, the state said the only way that law enforcement could get them would be if they were looking to prosecute the family for lying about eligibility for services.
Correct.
Like welfare fraud.
Correct.
That's the only way they could get
because the people were on welfare.
Right.
They were on SNAP. They were on a lot of
stuff.
So
these notes were all they're all confidential.
But the reason why we bring this up is
remember that John Little also soon after we took over and hired an investigator to have better communications with their office. He cut off our access to the notes so we could no longer check in to see how things were going.
Correct.
To see if we needed to gear up to be ready to remove a child.
Correct.
So, again, that's John Little.
And I believe there was 5 or 6 people in his office on a state PIP plan. So a PIP is a personal improvement plan.
Right.
And the state puts workers who are not meeting their bar. And so there was 5 or 6 people who were in charge of cases for children.
Yep.
On that, obviously I'm not in the office. I don't have access to that information now. But I guarantee you, it's at least 5 or 6 now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? I'll guarantee you that.
There's no doubt.
And the reason why we bring this up is add in this facility, okay? It's just going to be more of the same.
It's going to be more of the same. You're going to have what's not more of the same is the location. And remember they say in marketing it's location, location, location.
Correct.
So now we're using hotels that are in areas that are zoned commercial or industrial.
So that gives you several things.
Right.
One, gives you good parking.
Right.
Okay. It gives you access to convenience stores, all that fun stuff. The Sullivan 180. That is the transit system inside the county. You can move around easily if you have to go to the hospital. If you decide to change your life and you want to go to college. It gets you to move around. You want to see your family, and you don't live in Liberty, but you live in Monticello or another place. It gets you moving around.
That's a Sullivan. That's the Move Sullivan program that you spearheaded, right. And the great Laura Quigley just made it work. And look at how it's grown.
Who's better than her?
That's why that's one of the reasons that these hotels work where they are, because they are high crime areas. They are patrolled by our law enforcement officers who do as great a job as can be done controlling a very difficult population. Remember, even the college dormitory was a disproportionately high crime scene.
Correct.
So, the county does not have a good track record of housing people
and not having high crime.
Yeah, I mean, even the dormitory was, you built a dormitory and the enrollment plummeted.
Correct.
Because the dormitory was not a place where a family from Malvern, Long Island was going to send their 18-year-old daughter.
Was not going to happen.
Not going to happen. So this Pitaluga...
Oh, and by the way, it didn't happen, and the thing's closed now.
Correct. The Pitaluga property is in a residential neighborhood.
Correct. It's going to be a disaster.
So now you've got a situation where you have a high potential for crime. I don't want to disparage anybody because you're going to bring the mental health issues and the drug issues. Mental health and drug issues together, Brian will tell you if he was here, it often equals high crime.
Correct.
So Honor is quick to point out that we have security. Well, security will be securing that building.
Correct.
But what's it doing for the neighbors' homes that will be in a high-risk area?
You want to read some of these other reviews?
Sure. Why don't you do that?
Okay.
Because I know our audience wants to hear these things because they're not getting this from the legislature.
They're not. It's the sugarcoat job again. Unfortunately this is a feel-good project. That's not going to have anyone feeling good in about 2 years. Okay?
Well, in fairness, and John, under your administration, was pushing for a homeless shelter, and your question always was, why does the county want to be in the lodging business?
Correct.
When we have hotels that are in the lodging business, and
that's what they do.
They're difficult. That's what they do. But the sites that you were talking about were sites that were not in residential neighborhoods.
Correct.
But this has always been a project of Mr. Little.
Okay, to be fair, there's one from a year ago, and it's a great place. The workers are pleasant and don't look down on you. Okay, I mean they have some
very nice.
They have some nice reviews.
Yep.
And there's some pretty nasty ones here. Let's read. My boyfriend keeps calling to ask for assistance, and they keep declining and saying he can't have housing for a month, which would be wrong because you called a homeless shelter for a reason and rejected someone for a shelter is plenty. I can't get into it.
We only have 20 beds.
Yeah, correct. So again, it's a lot of and you can go online, on a shelter, Seaward Avenue, Middletown, New York, and they have probably 40 reviews here. The majority of them are very unpleasant.
And so this will be 20 beds, all singles. So we're not going to address any of our homeless families.
Which is the main issue.
Which is the main issue of concern. We're not going to address them. And if this is going to be a short-term emergency housing type of a situation, the effectiveness of whatever programs they have there is going to be greatly diminished because the people are only going to be there for a couple of nights.
So very bad place, don't help. They touch your medication, and they are not med certified. The beds are hard plastic, very hot. The bed mattresses don't, okay.
They don't say that about Sheriff Schiff's facility.
They do not. So the point being is that they don't have any drug issue. They don't have any drug certified people there. They don't have medication certified people. What are we doing? We're just changing geography. Is all we're doing.
Well, what we're doing is we're building a lasting monument to John Little, and it may be appropriate as a monument to John Little.
That will be appropriate. So. This isn't all grant money. This is $4 or $5 million out of the county coffers.
Right. Well, you left them all that money. They might as well waste it.
They've done a very fine job of doing that. This is a nowhere project.
And then it borders the sheriff.
Correct.
So we know how busy Chief DeGata's staff is dealing with the hotels in Liberty.
Correct.
So now the sheriff, who already is at a critical point of having enough staff to cover the entire county, particularly some of the outlying areas out in the western part of the county.
Correct.
Now is going to have to be diverted to cover that. Oh, they'll say, well, it's in the village police will. Their property borders the sheriff's office. Who do you think is getting called?
I can tell you right now who they're getting called.
Right. So more drain on the sheriff's office, which means less deputies available to respond in the rest of the county.
Correct. All for one address.
All for one address. All for 20 people. All in a residential neighborhood, which affects the lives and the property values of those people. Those people are going to see their property values drop precipitously.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're not going to be wanting to buy a house bordered by a homeless shelter. I'm sorry, folks, but we're not.
It's not going to happen.
I mean, maybe I know that that the legislator McPhillips from District 1, he's got a fairly big piece of property. Maybe he could subdivide and put it on his property.
So it's funny that you mentioned that, because when we were going over his
promises, his campaign
promises, he said in his promises, now keep in mind the election was in 2023.
Correct.
He said that, when my wife and I lost the lease at our home and we couldn't find a place, so I did a little research, because that's what I do.
That's what you do.
Right? So he bought a 5-acre parcel in Bethel. In 2021.
Before.
And submitted plans to build, a very large, nice home in 2022. It just wasn't built yet. Okay.
Right.
So when he says I couldn't find a place to buy, that's a flat out lie.
Well, he didn't need a place to buy. He already had bought a place.
Yeah, he was having a place built already.
Right.
That he lives in today.
Correct.
Right. So when he sits there and says, "Oh, I couldn't find the place," no, you already had plans. You already spoke to the architect. You already did all this already. You already picked out your drapes and everything else. You were just trying to hang on and find a place to stay until the house was finished. So to say that you couldn't find a home, with 2 working adults, it's just a little disingenuous.
So to most families, certainly in this county, the most valuable asset they have, and trust me, I've handled enough divorces in this county to know, the most valuable asset is your home. That, for some people, is the start of their retirement, is their home. So the legislature is going to take $8 million from the state, invest another $3-4 million, put greater strain on law enforcement in a residential neighborhood, all while, one, not adequately addressing the homeless population in the county, not addressing homeless families at all, not addressing homeless children at all, and diminishing the value of 20 or 30 or 40 residences that border that. And that's what the legislature wants to do.
And not address the drug issue one iota.
And not even have the capacity to address the drug issue.
In fact, they let agencies leave the county without a peep.
Without a peep.
Without a peep.
Yeah. So we now are a county that, we get Albie Bachman here, he'll tell you that we have probably not conquered yet the opioid problems in this county, and yet now we have virtually no facilities available to deal with them. We have virtually no mental health facilities to deal with them. I mean, we have Sullivan County Mental Health Services, but I'm involved in a case right now where we had a young man that had to be sent down to Rockland County.
Wow.
I mean, there's just no facilities available to deal with mental health problems. So it's a very, very serious issue.
It's not being addressed.
And 20 beds in a residential neighborhood, getting rid of county property, is not going to do anything to address it. So the question that in your leadership was always asked, the very first question, when someone would come to the county with a plan to sell them something, your question always was, what's the benefit to the county?
Correct.
So my question is, and we'll have any of the legislators here that want to talk about it, what's the benefit to the county of spending $12 million to to get 20 beds.
4 of which is ours.
4 of which is county taxpayers.
Correct.
The rest comes from the state. Still, we pay state taxes.
Yeah, but it's comes
spread
out of our
out.
coffers.
The $4 million is coming out of our coffers. What's the benefit to the county?
What is the benefit?
You're going to be housing single men without drug programs in there in a residential neighborhood.
I have an idea. I know this is a crazy idea. How about they do a little work other than showing up at a meeting and not reading their stuff, and then they just go off for a tangent about something that they have no idea what they're talking about? How many times did we see that?
Well,
right?
Yeah.
So, and then actually research models that work.
Oh, well, but see, it's a lot easier to just not research, have somebody come in, sell them something. Maybe they have snake oil. So they can buy that up, and it's going to solve all of the problems.
So remember when we were doing the hangar up at the airport?
Oh, how could I forget it?
And we had to kick in an extra couple $1 million, right? And people were like,
that was the
bull
terminal.
crap. This is bull crap. We have other things that we could spend money on. They were carrying on and on, right? And then, we spent, I believe it was $2 million more. And, we had to change the size of it and the scope of it. But it's still a very nice facility.
It's a very nice, getting ready to open soon.
Correct. And so they were carrying on and on about that. So now they're willing to spend double for a disaster. Correct.
So that, the airport project, brought our airport into the current century.
Correct.
It gives us restaurant facilities that would encourage people to fly in and out of there. We get a lot of people coming in for concerts, a lot of people coming in for the car club, so it becomes an ancillary facility.
Not only that,
second homeowners.
What people do not understand, okay, is that, and we've been in the homes, okay?
Right.
We've been brought to the homes. And
we toured the homes.
And they own a plane, they own a plane, they own a plane, they own a plane, right? And, there are at least 50 homes in this county worth $1 million apiece paying taxes on those homes.
Right.
Because of that airport.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct.
And they buy the fuel there, and they generate business here, and then they spend money at our local stores and sales tax and all that stuff. And they're like, why would you spend money on that? Because it generates more money.
Right.
All this is going to do is be a disaster and drain our resources.
If it works, great. You're emptying the ocean with a thimble.
But show me where it has worked.
Right. Well, remember when we showed them Covanta, they didn't want any part of it, and it literally could light up Sullivan County.
Correct. So my point is, I believe that there should be a social safety net.
Sure.
I do believe that. Okay, I honestly do believe that. I remember one time a good friend of mine, his wife is a good friend of yours, but he's tough to deal with. And when I was first running, I ask you 20 questions to see where you are, right? And at the end of the 20 questions, he's like, "You're a Democrat socially. You understand that, right?" I go, "I don't know if I'm a Democrat, but not that there's anything wrong. My parents were Democrats."
Right.
I was like, I don't think I'm a Democrat. I'm not the modern day Democrat.
Right.
I'm more of a 60s
Democrat, a Kennedy Democrat.
Yeah, like a Kennedy Democrat. And I do believe in socialism. I remember there was times I would say that to Josh about stuff, and he'd look at me and be like, "I thought you were a Republican." I go, "No." And Laura Quigley and I would talk about issues.
She felt that you were savable. You were salvageable.
Yeah, I was salvageable. And that's why, some people still talk to me because they think that they can save me.
Right.
But the point being is that let's look for a model that does work.
Right.
Let's go and not just come to the first person that says, "Hey, I have a great idea," right? Let's find the model that does work. Let's see the success rates, and it has to deal with more families than individuals. The individuals, that's not our problem here. Our biggest problem is the children.
Right.
And they're ignoring the children and spending money that should be spent on children and finding the correct model.
When I've asked folks, what's the motivation, I hear $8 million. Well, you're gonna get $8 million to build a facility that's not going to address your need at all, that's going to diminish property values, it's going to increase crime in an area that, I mean, you don't want crime anywhere, but you certainly don't want to expose young children to a high crime area bordering them. So the benefit here is twofold. We get $8 million, but we have to spend another $4 million. And John Little gets to say, under my leadership, we have opened a homeless shelter. Show me the benefit to the county.
Correct.
There doesn't appear to be a benefit. So, folks, we're going to keep an eye on this project. My understanding is it did not pass.
No, they are setting another public hearing for it. I believe in June sometime. So we have to keep our eyes on this, and hopefully in that meeting it will not pass again.
That's the hope, is that the legislators that stand against it will have a backbone and will continue to stand against it, if for no other reason than it's not going to move the needle in terms of the problems confronting the county.
Correct. What should really try to happen is one of the 5 people that did vote for it, maybe they could change their mind and come to the other side and understand that that's the wrong decision.
Well, I mean, the hope is, unfortunately, we have some resume builders that want to be able to then run for some other office by saying, we addressed the homeless problem and the drug problem in the county by building a state-of-the-art facility. Well, you didn't, but that's okay. As we learned in previous shows, what they say in campaigns doesn't really mean anything. They just want to say it.
They haven't acted on any of the things that they said.
Right. So, folks, once again, Rob, the hour again has passed quickly. We want to hear from you. When you are watching us on YouTube, you want to take the time, do it right now while you're listening to us. We're wrapping the show up. Take the time to
smash
that like button, and you want to subscribe so that when we have a new episode launched, and Jacob is right on it, he'll have this one launched probably within 24 hours, you'll get an alert on your phone.
Well, it goes up on Spotify pretty fast.
Goes up on Spotify pretty quickly, and I've had people call me saying, there's something wrong, I haven't gotten an alert. Well, we've been on hiatus for 2 weeks, but we're back now.
I was sick, and then I went on vacation.
Right. So we are back now. So when you are on Spotify, subscribe so we can get the subscriptions up to 1,000. We're getting very, very close. Then we can live stream. Then we can include your thoughts. If you have a comment for us, if you think that Rob and I are just hopeless, conservative, politician, Republican, conservative Democrats, whatever you want to label us, tell us that. We'll invite you to come on and we can talk about it. We would love to have one of the legislators come on and tell us why this is a good idea for the county to spend $4 million to get 20 beds and create a high crime area in a residential neighborhood. So leave us a comment and then share the link. Put the Ion Sullivan link up on your page so that more people. The key here, folks, is that good decisions are going to be made when we send an idea through the crucible of public opinion.
Correct.
So let's get the public weighing in on this. It's too late once it opens and there's a horrific crime that happens there, or someone is injured, or a series of houses are broken into. It's too late then. Now is the time that let your opinion be known. And you can always drop us an email at ionsullivan@gmail.com. EYE Unsullivan@gmail.com. Rob, last comments.
Oh, no. It's very important that the public's heard on this issue. I suggest that you go on to the Sullivan County Legislature agenda, see when the meeting's going to be, where they're going to have another public hearing, because the last one failed, and get out there and, you get your 3 minutes and get up there. I'm telling you, you can sway people. No one likes to hear negative comments. Trust me when I tell you. And you get up there and you try to sway them to, go with the right thing. And we believe that the right thing is not to bring this facility to the county. There has to be a better model. We believe that there are better models, and it has to be about the children. If you're not spending our money that we have, in the coffers for our children, I do believe that you're wasting the money.
So, on behalf of Rob Daugherty, this is Mike McGuire thanking you for joining us for this episode of Eye on Sullivan and inviting you to tune in next week for another episode of Eye on Sullivan. Enjoy your week, folks.